Waiting for our live stream to begin.
So impressive that you do a live stream.
It's our TV studio right here. Okay. Okay, so welcome everyone to this reading of Heretic, a queer revolt against evangelicalism, empire, and the lies we are sold, with Gina Cadlick. So my name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, along with my partner, Donnie Jochum. And the Bureau is an all-volunteer, independent queer bookstore that we founded in 2012 and that has been here at the LGBT Center since 2014. And we're being helped tonight by our volunteers, Mel and Smitha. And a special thanks to Smitha for introducing us to Gina and making this event happen. So much appreciated.
Smitha is in the book.
And Smitha's in the book. Made the event happen. It's Smitha's event.
I will not take that credit.
So as an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore, we rely on both sales and donations to keep this machinery going. So I'm going to pass a bag around with some change in there if you need it. You can also give on Venmo. There's a QR code there. Anyone watching online can do that as well. It's BGSQD is the handle. So I'll pass that around.
Thank you.
The offering plate. So the Bureau has regular business hours Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we stay open later when we have events such as this. And if you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the store or on our website, which is bgsqd.com. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our upcoming events. And we have quite a few. Busy time. So before we get started, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community House, founded in 1969 and located here in Manhattan. The mission of American Indian Community House, AICH, is to improve and promote the well-being of the American Indian community and to increase the visibility of American Indian cultures in an urban setting in order to cultivate awareness, understanding, and respect. Donating to the AICH is one way for settlers and non-native people to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at aich.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective queer liberation. And we strongly encourage you to take one of our free zines at the back about why we feel it is important for queer people, especially to speak out in solidarity with Palestinians. And last but not least, today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. So as we remember and mourn those we've lost, we remain steadfast in our commitment to supporting the well-being of our trans siblings, to lifting up trans voices, and to speaking out against the persistent attacks against trans people. Before we get started, I also wanted to just say that we're going to be, and maybe this is obvious, talking about some painful topics. So if at any point you want to get up and take a breath of fresh air outside, that is perfectly fine. Do whatever you need to do. And now let's get into it. Gina Cadlick is the author of Heretic, a queer revolt against evangelicalism, empire, and the lies we are sold, and the forthcoming Astrology for Artists. A born and raised Midwesterner, she now lives in New York City with her wife, who is in the audience. Please give her a warm welcome.
I know, we've been clapping so much.
Keep clapping. So yeah, Gina, you want to start off with a little reading?
I thought I would just read a tiny bit from the book, just to kind kind of put us all on the same page together. Just the littlest bit that's actually the very end, because I do love to end with queer joy rather than the trauma and sadness that is most of memoir. So this is just a tiny bit from the last chapter. Coming out and leaving the church was a death of an identity, a worldview, everything I thought I had known about myself. Like so many queer people before me, I lost friendships, family, community. But there is a secret that the church does not want those of us who have left to remember. There is a love that is as strong as death, the love you discover for yourself when, as Audre Lorde once wrote, you define yourself for yourself. I buried my old self years ago. Do not look for her. She is not there. This is the truth about queer people. We have resurrected ourselves. We are born again. Our tombs are empty. We are risen.
Amen.
Yeah. The tiniest bit.
Thank you so much. I too survived an upbringing in a white evangelical context. So we have a lot in common. The book resonated with me very much. And I love that you quote Audre Lorde quite a bit. I feel like Audre Lorde is queer scripture.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
And I especially love that you quoted from the uses of the erotic, which is such an empowering essay.
Yeah, my favorite. If it's possible to have a favorite of hers, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Which is probably evident based on how much I quoted.
Yeah.
In the book.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I thought we'd start at the beginning.
Yeah.
You begin by talking about your visit to a courthouse to file for divorce. And you wrote, I was leaving the garden, the evangelical church, and the only version of myself that I had ever known. I was choosing who I wanted to be, but I had no idea who she was. A familiar feeling.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you can talk about the relationship between leaving your marriage and leaving the church.
For me, those were very much one and the same. I grew up very evangelical, like Greg said, with a very fundamentalist view of scripture. For those who are familiar with the distinctions, like this wasn't Joel Osteen prosperity gospel. This was puritanical, like we're all sinners, babies are sinners and are going to hell until they get saved. You know what I mean? Like babies are sinners is a common refrain in the kinds of churches I grew up in, which is to say there was not a lot of grace for interpretations of scripture that were not the pastor's literal definition. And this kind of gets at something I actually do still struggle with, like being a queer person who's now been out for a really long time. You know, I do run into folks from time to time who are familiar with cool Jesus, and they really like cool Jesus, which, like, listen, don't let me take that from you. They're like, cool Jesus was a brown Palestinian refugee who's the son of a teenage mom, and he hung out with sex workers. Yes. And if you're gonna take scripture and like what it says about him and what it, sorry, am I having?
No,
that's
upstairs.
something else.
There's always.
Noted, all good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something with the mic.
Nope.
This is a long-winded Midwestern way of saying that Jesus allegedly, if we believe what scripture attributes to him, allegedly says a lot about divorce and marriage and how sinful divorce is and how even if you get divorced and you marry someone else, you're committing adultery with that new person because you're actually married to your first. Which is to say, growing up in churches that had a very literal definition of like that, to me, there was no universe in which a divorce or leaving my abusive ex-husband did not mean leaving the church. Because to me, getting divorced was saying that this is something Jesus can't fix. And if you say, and as you know, like within the New Testament, you know, Protestants only have one unforgivable sin, and it's the sin of blasphemy. It's the sin of denying the power of Christ over an area of your life. A lot of that probably sounds like nonsense if you didn't grow up in any proximity to the church, but if you did grow up in proximity, it's probably all too familiar. Which is to say, even though I was newly out and queer and like, you know, declaring myself for myself, Fundamentalism is a worldview that takes a really fucking long time to unpack. And so I still very much had that kind of black and white mentality. It's all or nothing. If this isn't true, then none of it can be true. Yeah, that's a very good question, and I don't even know if I answered it, but
Well, you did,
Yeah.
but you gave it a good try.
I gave it a good try.
At least, according to the book, you gave it a good try going to some churches in Boston
Yeah,
after divorcing your husband.
yeah.
But I know it didn't, in the end, they weren't very satisfying.
Yeah, it just didn't quite, again, kind of I think for the reasons I've sort of already like started to get into, you know, I tried to go to a united, like a, what am I saying? Unitarian, what is that what it is? Thank you, that one. I tried to go to a UU. I tried to go to a UU church. I tried to do Episcopalians. Like I tried to do, you know, a lot of Protestant and mainline denominations are like remarkably chill. And I had friends who attended those churches. I think I had grown up in a version that was too extreme, too all or nothing, and it was very hard. It was both very healing to sit in those spaces and, you know, hashtag not all Christians, like, oh, hey, they're like really lovely here. But personally, I just really came to a space where I was like, I can't make this work. I did try, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would say for me, it had to do with like, but at the end of the day, God is still a man. We're still in the patriarchy. I don't know how you have a post-patriarchal Christianity.
Yeah.
I know people try. I've had conversations with them and I'm like, okay, it's working for you.
Yeah. I mean,
But I don't, it's so inescapable, the language of the Father,
Yes.
the Father, the Father.
No, I very much resonate with that. And also, you know, I had friends who were UU, and I think at the end of the day, when they were like, well, you can be Christian, you can be UU, my toxic trait was I was like, UU isn't Christian. UU is very inclusive and accepting, and it acknowledges, it's really like quite polytheistic, and like the sense that it's very much okay with Jesus and also okay with a lot of other deities. And not that obviously people can go to UU and have their own particular discrete beliefs. It's like very cool about that. But I was like, that's not the same thing to me as Christianity.
Yeah.
Christianity at the end of the day is a church that's like, Jesus died for your sins. All have sinned, all have fallen short of the glory of God. Like, that's Christianity. Like, if we were really laying it down and like forcing everyone to agree on one thing. And if we can't agree on that one thing, then, and if I don't know if I agree with that one thing, then why the hell am I here?
Yeah.
Like, I may as well not. Which,
And do I want to try and salvage this train wreck?
yeah.
When you can just walk away.
When you can just walk away, but then like even still, as you're saying, like walking away, you still have to reckon with all of that stuff you've internalized.
Yeah.
And reckon with all of the theology. I don't know, I feel like I went and I'm on such a research kick after I left the church. I learned so much more about it and so much more about where these beliefs came from and who even decided these things. Like that I definitely was not, no pastor I ever sat in the congregation of their church, like none of them were citing their sources. I know they have sources. I know they went to seminary. They know how some of the sausage got made, but like I didn't know that. And so doing a lot of the book is also the product of that research I did. And, you know, my mom was amazed at how much is in there. And I was like, yeah, you didn't teach, because she's like, how did you figure all this out? I'm like, it's not hidden.
There are books and records.
You just have to be confident enough to ask the question and not think that asking the question is evidence of doubt.
Right. If you're scared of doubt, you're not going to pursue those questions.
Exactly.
Because they're dangerous.
Because they're dangerous. For obvious reasons. We end up here in the West Village talking about church. Like, we move to New York City, we become sinners.
Exactly. Speaking of all that you just said about the research, I really appreciated that, how you weave together your personal story with a larger story about Christianity, especially white, and I do want to keep insisting on white Christianity because it is a particular thing. Christianity is so racialized in this country.
Yes.
There's no way to avoid that. And, but I wanted to ask, what does growing up in a white evangelical context teach you about this country that outsiders might overlook?
I think a really obvious thing about the white evangelical church, that itself is not a monolith. There are a lot of discrete categories and versions that you get. You know, if you're in Texas, you're going to get a different version than if you're in Iowa, than if you're in California. Like there's a lot of variance and difference. That said, especially by way of how much of an influence white evangelicalism has on our country, I grew up, for lack of a better word, Zionist, like deeply Zionist, deeply obsessed with Israel's right to exist as a state, deeply certain that the existence of Israel as a state, for example, is directly tied to the fulfillment of Book of Revelation's end time prophecy, which will then result in like Jesus coming back and erasing the world and starting over and everybody dies, rocks fall, everyone dies. But I think that to that point of like, what do people overlook? I think on the one hand, over the last few years, very sadly, we have been forced to look at how many of the connections there are between evangelical theology and teaching and the state of our country and the state of the Republican Party, certainly. But I think one of the things that got overlooked for so long was how Zionist the evangelical church is and how much evangelicalism is what makes so much of AIPAC possible. And that is not something that it's getting flagged more, but it's still under the surface of so many of those conversations.
Yeah, there are far more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists,
Yes.
which is kind of crazy.
Actually, yeah.
Israel might not exist were it not for evangelical Christians in this country.
Literally, the most Zionist people I know are all evangelical. None of them are, I guess with the exception of like some friends of friends who did birthright and then moved to Israel. You know, sometimes that happens, but like most of the explicit Zionists I know are quite Christian and very much not Jewish at all.
Right.
And also not especially concerned with how, even though they say Jewish people are God's chosen people, they also don't believe that those people will be saved in the end times. And I'm gonna fall off, I'm gesturing too much, I'm gonna fall off the stool. But anyway, yeah, that's a long rant, but.
Yeah, no, it's very pertinent to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And you know, I've certainly had many people say to me, you know that your bookstore wouldn't survive 5 minutes in Gaza. I'm like, well, there are many reasons for that being true.
Yeah.
But don't come for me.
Yeah.
The Christians did plenty of damage to me.
Yeah.
Muslims did not. I know that there are Muslim fascists. There are Muslims who do terrible things. There are Jews who do terrible things. There are people of all kinds.
We know a lot of Christians who do
and lots of
terrible
Christians. So
Yeah.
that just
I think it's-
drives me crazy.
That argument is such a bad faith argument too. It's like you're being told by a homophobic, fascist person who votes against our right to do anything, and that we should not support another part of the world because there are people like that there too. I'm like, no, that's not, like, there are queer people who are Palestinian.
Right.
There are queer people in Gaza. Like, there are queer people everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, there's no monolith on, and that's also, anyway,
Yeah.
we're of a mind on that.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with that larger topic of abjection, of being beyond the circle of empathy, of being so disgusting and so out other.
Yes.
That many queer people see Palestinians and say, oh, I get it, I relate. I mean, it's not the same, but I understand what it means to be put in a category that means I'm not fully human.
Yeah. And it's that, I mean, it's what you said though, it's like, who's outside the circle of empathy? Like, who in this country, like for white evangelicals, to keep harping on that, but it's a useful little shorthand for the particular kind of folks we're talking about, like, you know, who a lot of their fellow evangelicals who are Black are also outside of that circle of empathy. Folks who are immigrants are also outside of that.
Unless they identify as like honorary white
Mhm.
Christians.
Which only
Like
gets
they're not
you-
willing to, if they're willing to not talk about race,
Yeah,
and the obvious
yeah.
history of this country, then they can be welcomed into that circle of empathy, but they really have to become white.
And also like that's always tangential is not the word I want. It's always conditional.
Yeah.
Like whiteness is granted very conditionally
Yeah.
to Jewish people in this country, to Latinx people in this country, also only some of whom are in that like conditional category in the first place. Like as I think we're seeing with how the absolute backlash that Trump is facing again with Latinx voters, like so many of whom voted for him, like men of a certain age especially, like
Yeah.
voted for Trump, and there's tremendous backlash now. It's like because that conditional promise doesn't match up. It doesn't work. You can't just extend it out. Anyway, yeah.
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 So a lot of the book is dealing with the trauma, religious trauma, and you use that term, and you
Yeah.
say that there's more and more people are talking about that term, religious trauma. How would you define it?
That actually might be the hardest question I've ever been asked. I think if you are someone who has had to significantly reckon with the worldview you were raised with, particularly as it's grounded in a kind of morality, this is good, this is bad, the stakes are eternal life, or what have you.
Yeah.
I think religious trauma is something you're probably working with. Like, have you spent more than one therapy session talking about whether you are a good person or not, and why we're concerned with being good people, and how morality can exist if it's like in a relativist frame? Like, if any of those questions are things you've spent a lot of time doing, probably you have that. It's my very unofficial, not a psychologist, didn't go to school for any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, well, I wanted to read another quote from the book. You said, "I had been trained since birth to believe that I was an unreliable narrator of my own life. Evangelicalism as a whole, as an entire religious sect, trains its believers, and in particular its women, from childhood to doubt themselves and to actively disconnect from their bodies and desires. Your body is not your own." I feel like that's such a major point of the book, and it certainly resonates with me. And I'm wondering if do you feel like you still struggle with that self-doubt, if it's something that, I mean, I know it does for me.
Much less these days, but I think a lot about the fact that I didn't really know how to identify what I was feeling, even into my mid-20s. Like I was 25, 26, and a friend would be like, "Well, are you okay? You don't look okay." And I was just so dissociated from where things lived in the body, just somatically. I couldn't tell you what I felt. And that is a very useful thing to cultivate in children in a culture that does not prioritize consent, that does not prioritize people's bodily autonomy. It's very helpful if they don't know what they feel or how they feel or why they feel it. And I feel like so much of the work of my 20s was just reconnecting my mind with my nervous system and like understanding how to identify what made me upset or sad or angry or happy or joyful, or what sex I liked, which is its own journey as a queer person. It's like, is it enough to, it's like, are you queer if you're dating a butch who fucks like a straight man? Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. I've had that, but that was,
It's a lot to figure out.
Yeah, it's a lot and I think that's the thing that any young person is trying to figure out for themselves, period.
Yeah.
Like, just no matter who they are,
Yeah.
just you're growing up, what do you like, what do you not like, what situations feel good for you, and if you are constantly told to behave in a certain way, and again, this is not unique to Christianity in any way, like conservative religion, conservative families, like abusive families, like this is very across the board, but like if you learn that it's only safe to act in certain ways and that you have to control all the other parts of yourself lest they create an environment that is not safe, that is a lot of programming to unlearn.
Yeah, and you really do disconnect from your body. And
Yeah.
and again in evangelical Christianity, you're told to fear your body, to
Yes.
fear your desires.
Yeah.
You're
Because
constantly
the body is
praying
sinful.
the body is
The
sinful.
flesh is sinful.
I know.
Yeah.
Later when I went to college and getting into, I love etymology. I love digging into the words and finding out their sources. And when I realized that the word matter, matter, the material world, it's something so denigrated that it comes from the Latin for mother. It was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And the misogyny runs so
Yeah.
deep. Everything feminine
Yeah.
is demonized.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's wild the way that so much of that in like the Latin especially dovetails with the not interjection, but the kind of like interjection or like arrival of, patriarchal sky gods, for lack of a better word. Like so many origin myths the world over are matriarchal in some capacity, or just very playful with gender and who does what and who is in charge of what, and there's not always an automatic association of men with, what is like above or authority. But yeah, language shapes our reality.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. You ask, when we walk away from the harm of some organized religions, how do we recover the communal sacred for ourselves? And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the ways that you've managed to recover the communal sacred for yourself, or what does that term even mean to you?
I think for me, a really key thing has been like D&D, honestly, Dungeons and Dragons.
Which comes up in the
Which
book.
comes up in the book, which Smitha was the DM
Hashtag
for the first game. But are basically, how to back up a little bit, because to me, so much of what did feel so sacred about church, and what I loved about church, I loved worship. I loved singing with other people and being in a room with other people and getting to having this kind of agreed upon subject point upon which we all interacted. And there just aren't a lot of secular opportunities for that bring the same-ish group of people together in a regular way. That is like churches and religious spaces are kind of like one of the last third spaces in the US, really. Like so much of the funding for our third spaces has disappeared. And so essentially I think personally have found a lot of communal sacred in those spaces where I can gather with relatively the same group of people once or twice a month, and we're playing and creating together and connecting and being really vulnerable and exploring new topics. And it's not church, but it's arguably better. And I don't know, my greatest wish for my friends who do not play D&D is that they don't have to play D&D. I'm not proselytizing, but that they would find some like playful thing that they get to do with other grown-ups. Like whether that's a book club or like joining roller derby, my niece could never, but like, whatever it is that we are cultivating those spaces outside of like one-on-one friendship and, work and family, like, because we need those. I don't know, that is so much of what makes us human, is just being in relationship with people and not just like people who we are bound together through capitalism with.
And prescribed roles, that there's room for play.
Yeah.
And
play really play is my answer to that question, because play is also, as you know, so vilified as sinful. Like, we aren't anything that isn't ultimately for the glory of God is not worth doing. Again, I grew up very puritanical, not not Joel Osteen. We didn't have fun at church. That was not okay. So in a lot of ways, recreational play and fun has been very healing in ways I did not expect.
My experience was kind of weird. I mean, my parents are from a Southern Baptist tradition, but my mom loved Tammy Faye Baker.
Oh.
And now I'm like, the fuck, why couldn't you be more like her? She could be a good role model for you, mother, and not just in terms of makeup.
Yeah.
My mom enjoyed her makeup, and she just went on and on about how we were taught, to fade into the background and, not draw attention to ourselves. And I just love Tammy Faye, and she's so happy and free and la 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 la.
There's a new Tammy Faye on the block though, right? Charlie Kirk's widow. Erica, whatever the fuck her name
She's
is.
a hateful one.
So, yeah, but it's funny, I saw some folks talking about this. I was like, oh, that's exactly what it is. It's like she's the Tammy Faye for our generation. Like she's gonna make it TV. And like she's one of these women who is allowed to go in public space in the church as ministry.
Right.
Like it's her ministry to be that kind of public, maternal figure. Anyway, I'm watching her with a lot of interest right now.
Yeah. It's always fascinating to see conservative women in the public sphere. It's like, why aren't you home baking cookies? Isn't that your role? What are you doing out here talking? That is a man's role.
No, Kate Bowler has a wonderful book about that, if anyone's interested. It's called The Preacher's Wife, and it talks about women having evangelical celebrity. Kate Bowler's a professor at Duke or UNC, it's a school in North Carolina, but it's very good because that's a question I really had growing up. I was like, we're not supposed to, but you are. And some women are like designated and allowed to be the exception. And Kate's book explained so much of that for me. So I definitely recommend it for anyone.
You wrote that this book is about the loss of faith, about the profound grief that our society is still working out language and narrative for. And I'm wondering if you could speak about that grief, what is being grieved and by whom?
Yeah, I mean, I think the book is so much about my personal, journey through grief and the way that, because I think there's this encouragement, especially, I'm a millennial, and so I was in my 20s when Obergefell happened. I have lived a very different life than elders I've met who were in their 20s when they were protesting Vietnam. Like we are very different generations with our relationship to like queerness and outness and all of those things. Which is to say that I think among my generation, there can be a tendency to gloss over, oh, you were in a harmful family, relationship, marriage, church, part of the country, but you left and it gets better, doesn't it? It like gets better right away. And that kind of, but also not, because leaving anything is really painful, especially people who you loved, and like a worldview, having your worldview shatter is one of the most profoundly destabilizing experiences a person can have. It does not get better with like 6 months of therapy. I needed like 6 years of therapy and other varying other kinds of like, again, support, play, all that stuff. So this is just to say, I think it's very much about grief on a personal level, and also just trying to own and make space for people to get to have grief about losing family, community who, yes, they're homophobic. Yes, they're Trump supporters. No, they're not someone who I would ever choose to be in a relationship with, but like, that's my dad. Or that's my best friend who I grew up with. And but both of them get to be true. Yes, they are someone who is not anyone I'd ever choose to be in a relationship with. And also like, I don't just get over that because I came out and everything is fine now. So I'm interested in creating more spaciousness around that. And the conversation honestly has already changed a lot from when the events of the book happened. I got a lot of but you should be glad to be gone, but your ex-husband's abusive, but you should be glad to be out of all of these things. You should be glad that you're not like around those church people anymore. But it was my life and it was all I knew. And I felt like there was a lot of denial. And to be fair, that was those were very academic circles in Boston, that I was in at the time.
View that like they aren't able to see anything but the bad.
Yeah, it was a lot of, well, those people are those are the bad white people, so you should be glad to be rid of the bad white people. And I'm like, it's more complicated than that. I'm always very encouraging of other people who have similar stories, similar upbringings, are working on memoir or personal essay and want to be talking about it, because there are still, for the fact that my book is out there and like Hijab Butch Blues is amazing, is out there. Gary Conley's book, Boy Erased, like really paved the way for so many of us.
Yeah.
It's a memoir. He's a white Southern man who wrote a memoir of conversion therapy. His dad's a pastor. He got like forced into conversion therapy while in college. So like there are some stories, but not enough.
Yeah.
And I think on a different, I'm Midwestern, okay, like I talk a lot. I'm extroverted and
That's why you're
Midwestern,
here.
so I've never met a brief answer to anything. Like Shakespeare says, brevity is the soul of wit. Not me. But the last thing I'll say there too is that I think that this, on a more collective level outside of the just me, like this country is, I think we've witnessed, especially among Democrats, both establishment and otherwise, how married people are to the idea that separation of church and state was a thing that ever mattered in this country or was a thing that existed. And it seems like on a collective level over this last decade especially, there's just been a lot going on to really reckon with the fact that separation of church and state. This isn't a Christian country. No, it is. There's, I think, on a much broader level, there's increasingly space to address the ways in which even people who don't grow up with any religion at all are still very much their lives are very much informed by the Protestant church in this country.
It shapes everything.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. I wonder, do we want to open it up to the audience? Does anyone have a comment or a question, or just want to share something related to what we've been talking about?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you feel like because you grew up in this like culture and these spaces, you're more like uniquely positioned to be able to talk to, say, like conservatives about liberal ideas than like a born and raised East Coast liberal who only has liberal parents kind of deal? Or do you think it's the opposite?
I think it can go, I think if I wasn't myself, the answer would be yes. But for all that like I've said and alluded to, for all that I do not speak with my father anymore and do not get along with him, I am his daughter and I sure am quite argumentative. So I am maybe not leading with the empathy and listening that I think is really necessary if someone's I used to do those conversations. That's actually what I'll say. I used to do those, but I haven't done them in a long time now because it didn't seem to make any difference.
You're banging your head against a wall.
You're banging your head against a wall, especially if someone is, having to defend something that like they firmly believe in with every fiber of their, like if you're reckoning with someone who's devout, there is no save. It's why I was more scared of during Trump won. I was more scared of Mike Pence. Because I'm like, he's a true believer. Like Trump can be bought, obviously. Like Trump is very upsetting in many, many, many ways. But Mike Pence scares the living shit out of me because he believes with every fiber of his being that he is doing God's will on work, and that kind of person cannot be there's no reining them in. Yeah.
That was before the MAGAs put up the.
That sure did. That sure did happen. Yeah, he's definitely not MAGA, but he's something.
He went home.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear much from Mike these days.
Yeah. But I think if anyone has the will and the patience to talk to, and I also frankly don't think queer and trans people owe it to explain why we're not sinful. It's such a bad faith argument to be entering into. I just don't think we owe it to explain our life choices or our lifestyle to someone who thinks we're going to hell in the first place. Yeah. And hell is just a concentration camp for people who don't agree with you. So,
an eternal
concentration camp, literally. Yeah. Yeah. Good question though.
Anyone else have any
I
questions?
know it's in the book, but where were you from?
Oh, I'm from very rural farm country Iowa. I also
Okay.
spent a little bit of time in Wisconsin. But I grew up, the best way to put it is about 30 miles from the closest town. And that closest town had one stop sign and one gas station. So that was the kind of rural. Not like Wyoming rural, but like pretty rural, yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's its own layer of
Yeah,
difficulties
yeah.
and challenges.
That's
Yeah.
out there.
What is it?
That's out there.
It is out there, it is out there.
Yeah, I mean, as fucked up as my childhood was, I'm really glad I was an hour north of New York City and exposed to so much
Yeah,
other stuff.
Yeah.
So even though, you know, I was firmly in it,
yeah.
it was like, but that's out there. It's wrong and bad and
But it does exist,
but
and
it
I know where I
exists
can
and
go.
I prefer their music. I never liked Christian music. I couldn't even pretend.
Oh,
Like Amy Grant and stuff.
okay, I do love Amy Grant.
Oh, do you?
I'm not gonna lie.
I was just always
love
like-
Amy Grant.
Fuck that, I like Depeche Mode.
You are a man of taste. Some of us did not have that.
Again, I was exposed to things, I had that around me and I'm so
Oh wait,
glad.
so like, did you listen to Personal Jesus and stuff when
Well,
you
that
were
was a
still-
little later.
It's a little
So,
later, okay.
Like I graduated from high school in '89. So
Okay,
that-
I was
and
almost
Personal
little.
Jesus was like 1990.
It was
91.
90s, yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I was praying hard for Jesus to make me straight, but I still was not listening to Christian music. Jesus saved me, but really, why do your followers have such terrible music?
Which is actually, I know we're at time, but that is an interesting question. Why is Christian art so bad?
I
Like,
always loved
so
The
bad.
Simpsons. There's that Simpson episode where the Simpsons are going to church and there's some announcement about Christian rock and Bart says like, everybody knows all the best bands are affiliated with Satan.
Lies.
It's true. It's just true.
Mhm.
Anyone else have any questions, comments, anything
Think-
else you want to
think
share?
We talked about it a little bit, but what are your thoughts on the rapture shit that happened recently on social media?
I missed this.
Okay, so on TikTok, Greg, are you on TikTok?
No.
Okay, well, good. First, stay off, don't get on. But there was, thank you for asking that, Smitha. There was a church recently, earlier this year, I've lost all sense of time, that decided that the rapture was happening over the summer on just this one day. And it broke containment in that way that like things that go viral go way beyond the intended circle. And it was funny because like on the one hand, you know, I had everyone in my life texting me being like, Gina, the rapture's coming. Like, what do you think?
Again?
That's what I wanted to say. I was like, people who, this is the first time they're hearing that a rapture exists and that churches sometimes think it's coming. Different churches decide the rapture is happening every year. I have been through so many failed raptures, like, so it didn't strike me as especially unique. It's just that it really broke containment and like made it onto, you know, MSNBC, which usually the random church in Ohio that decides the rapture is happening, it doesn't get beyond that town. So
It's
Yeah.
such a funny thing, you know, when you're growing
Yeah.
up in it and you're always told no one knows the hour.
no one knows that's the other thing, is we
Well,
grew
you
up
all
in
can't stop talking about it, and you seem pretty convinced that you do know the hour.
But this is what we're saying though, right? It's that these different evangelicals are not a monolith, because we grew up with the not even the sun knows the hour, not even Jesus knows when it's happening. So we always laughed at the churches. Like my family always thought it was hilarious. Oh, they think they know when the rapture's happening, those unbelievers. Like,
Yeah.
but quite seriously, there's a lot of, I think the thing that was most interesting was people coming to understand on a more collective scale that part of the reason that evangelicals are so disinterested in so much like climate change, and I say this in the book, I'm like, it's not, yes, half of them don't think it's real. Plenty of them do, they just don't think we're gonna be around. They think Jesus is coming. They think Jesus is coming and is gonna start the world over, and that they aren't gonna have to deal with the effects of climate change in 50, 100 years. Like, I feel like that was a missing piece that started to click for people who were just learning what the rapture was. And that Christians have this escape fantasy. Or at least the evangelicals, I should say, have an escape fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of get out of jail free cards. Get out of arguments and conflict cards.
They're writing checks they can't cash.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you
Gina.
for having me. This was so lovely. I love the space, and y'all are doing such good work here, so thank
And
you.
I encourage everyone to read the book, whether you survived a Christian or other harmful religious upbringing or not. It's just a very encouraging story, and it gave me a lot of, it just was very comforting to me.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
And I felt very, very close to you. So
It's
thank
just, thank you. That's really kind. I think it's, again, just really important that we know we aren't alone. And no matter what difficult things you've gone through in life, it's like there are other people who have gone through it too. So that the book is a friend to other ex-religious folks is all I could ever ask, so thank you.
Read it. And I'm guessing you're cool with signing some books if anyone would like their books signed.
Bring them on up.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and
Thank
thank you,
you.
online audience, for joining us. Have a good